Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo. As always, joined by Joe Resinello, and once more, dear brothers and sisters, Sunday night in the big city, Joe. Let's go into the breach, brother. So we want to thank you all, as always, for joining us. Remember, because of your prayers, because of your support, all that you've done for us, all you good people out there, we are on the Crusade channel down with Mike Church. We have a show down there. We also are on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, the station that you could download their app so that you can have access to all their station's content. And Joe and my interviews over the last several months, which are extensive. And we just want to say awesome, because we get awesome people everywhere from, Dr. E. Michael Jones to Anthony DeStefano to Raymond Arroyo, a whole bunch of people. And they're really good conversations that we know you'd be interested in at Veritas Catholic Network. And as always, please follow Joe and I, our primary social media that we really want to build up. And we'd ask you to share this video, especially if you're following it on the Frontline TV on YouTube. Like it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it. Share it all over the place, particularly on Facebook. Trust me, that helps us out. So, Joe Resinello, 2021's over, baby.
Oh,
I didn't think it could get worse than 2020. Okay, Joe, I haven't been on unemployment since I was a teenager. So having been on unemployment in 2020, I was like, well, it can't get any worse than that. And then Joe Biden was installed as president. And in 2021, it's just this year's been a nightmare.
Dude, it's not Joe Biden's fault, Joe.
Oh, well, no, of course not. Because remember, Joe,
it's not Joe Biden's fault.
Joe, listen, let me put my hands here so the audience can see. Remember, Joe, it's the reflecting pool that look like the arms of Joe Biden reaching out to a wounded nation to heal it. He is such a lying, I don't even want to say it. I went to Mass today. Christine's in the chat room. Hey, Christine, I see her at Mass. We go to the same chapel together. And the bottom line is this: I don't want to do that. I don't want to detract. But Joe Biden has issues, man. And he is an angering type of guy. Now, Joe, I'm in a good mood tonight. Why? Because it's New Year's Eve? No, because New Year's Eve is a pagan holiday, okay? We're still in Christmas, baby. All right, right? Aren't we? Are we not still in Christmas?
Yeah, it's the I think it's the 9th day of Christmas.
Right. So we're still in Christmas, and that's why I'm joyful. It's got nothing to do with New Year's. New Year's is where you pinch incense to the emperor. It's pagan, okay? That's where idiots go. You know what, Joe? I'm going to tell you a quick thing, okay? Real quick for the audience out there. I had the privilege, okay? My wife and I, last night on New Year's Eve, we took a ride. My mom was with us, okay, for a couple of days. And my mom's older, for all you good people out there. And we went to our chapel, all right, that we go to, because they had adoration all day long. And my wife and I had signed up for 8 o'clock because I'm taking you all on what you said, Joe. I need to sit in front of Jesus more. I think we all do. So we went. It was New Year's Eve. We sat in front of Jesus for an hour. I reflected on my life. I asked Jesus to help me. But the beautiful thing is, when we got back, one of the orders that we're close to, Sisters of Life, Sisters of Life, they invited my wife and I up to a mass at their mother house for New Year's Eve. And I can't think of a greater way. While the pagans are getting drunk and toasting to the God of the New Year, okay, we were in a chapel praying with a bunch of beautiful religious sisters. And I can't think of a better way to bring in the new year with them, and of course with our blessed Lord. So it was great. But having said all that, Joe Resinello, 2021, Laura Hollis at WND, she basically hits it right on the head. She says it was a dumpster fire. However, we are going to talk tonight, okay, because it was a dumpster fire. But we're going to talk about some hope, because there is hope out there. And Joe and I are hopeful people. Why? Because we're Catholic. That's why. All right. If you ask me why I don't fear COVID, because I have hope in the resurrection. That's why. And I'm not being stupid. I'm not being funny. That's the truth. That's why people live in fear, and why we, all of us here, do not. And then if we get to it, we're going to talk about what we think and what others think is the fundamental progressive principle. And we think that that's important to talk about. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joe Resinello.
Talking about dumpster fires, do you know that the governor of Idaho called the state of California a dumpster fire?
I love it. I'm sorry.
The governor of Idaho called the state of California, because a lot of people are fleeing California, moving to Idaho. and you
Right.
basically called that state a dumpster fire.
Think of it this way, Joe. It's the fifth largest economy in the world, and they can't balance their books. Okay, that they have to keep taxing and taxing and taxing and tax, and that's aside from all the cultural trash you have to put up with. Joe, somebody put. You remember that? What did they used to call that stuff? You used to throw in the charcoal. Like the liquids. That was it, butane or whatever it was. Then you put that on the charcoal. You throw the match in there. Okay,
Sure,
somebody
sure.
did that to California a long time ago, and the fire's still burning. Okay, and that's what it is, man. It's a dumpster fire. And you know what? God bless the governor of Idaho. They Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, all those surrounding states or Texas, they should constantly be bashing California so that all the good conservative peoples in California get out of Dodge and get out of there. All right. And then leave them to themselves. Sorry, Joe, I cut you up, but go ahead.
So let's talk a little bit about Laura Hollis. She gives some lessons learned from 2021. I mean, sadly, many of these important issues the media deliberately lies about or disseminates basically false information. But let's just talk about a few. Trump did not collude with Russia. The border isn't
Hold it,
secure.
Joe. Hold it. Why are you spreading misinformation?
Oh
Okay.
my goodness gracious! They're
Let
gonna
me tell you something. I'm pretty sure during the Trump presidency, if you said that on YouTube, you get the platform. But because now it's been so completely debunked, you go ahead, Joe. You're free. You could say it. I'm sorry.
Higher prices aren't the result of companies gouging customers. Kyle Rittenhouse did not shoot 3 black men. We did not evacuate all Americans in Afghanistan before the disastrous military pullout. The Virginia gubernatorial election was not about white supremacy. Parents at school board meetings are not domestic terrorists. And the last but not least, President Joe Biden is not in excellent health.
You're a liar. You're a liar
Sadly,
to the rest of
though,
it. He's in excellent health, and he's sharp as a tack in
oh
his
my gosh.
brain.
Sadly, no one cares. You see, this is the worst part about it. America has gotten to a point now, like there could be some people here that could debate certain things that we just said. However, some of them are undebatable, if you ask me.
I think
Absolutely
everything. I think
undebatable. Cannot debate that the border is secure.
Joe.
If
I think
you think
everything
the
you
border's
just
secure,
said.
something's wrong with you.
I think
Democrat or Republican.
I 1,000%. Everything you just said is absolutely true. That is not open to some sort of esoteric
No,
interpretation of
no.
facts.
You have
No, no.
eyeballs that
What
work.
you just said, everything you just said, from Trump did not collude with Russia to Biden is not in excellent health. Biden is objectively not in excellent health,
Oh my
and
God.
Trump did not collude with Russia. And everything you said in between is spot on true.
No one cares. You see, we've come to a point. No one cares.
Right.
This is the sickness of like our nation right now. I remember when Obama debated Romney, and Romney was just frustrated. He was like, "You're going to get 47% of the vote no matter what happens." Too many people just don't care. They're
Right.
mindless. They just vote irregardless of outcome.
Right.
And this is what we have to get away from.
Mhm.
Lessons learned. I mean, it's been exacerbated. This like you people used to say like you're basically like a conspiracy theorist if you said that the media was biased. It's not just biased. It's straight out, like, to be honest with you, like obscene.
Joe, they want, if as we're growing, we're going to be, we might get executed at some point in the future. Okay.
Maybe literally, Joe.
No, I'm not even
To be
doing it.
honest with you.
But
Maybe literally.
listen, a lot of our conversations, we talk about the need for sacrifice and everything else. Joe, we're not at such a unique time in history that many Catholics and people of goodwill will be called to be martyrs. Our times are no different. Why? Because we have technology that makes us less barbaric. No, I think it actually makes us more. But that's a different argument. Okay. So the martyrdom could still be there. But the bottom line is that actually we got off on a different subject and I forgot my point. So I'm going to let you keep
No. But we're
going.
just talking about the outright like outrageousness of the media, like, and no one cares. You see, people they choose because it's their tribe, Joe.
Right.
Political tribalism has got to go. People, I'll be honest with you. I can't even say I'm a Republican. I'm a social conservative, and I'll be truthful with you. I could lean right fiscally, but I lean left with labor. I'll be
Yeah, I
honest
do.
with you.
Right.
On the border, I lean right. I'm not like a radical, crazy, like border person. I'll have a conversation with you. I believe in immigration, actually, and I don't believe in merit-based immigration. I think you have to give everybody a fair shake. Why should you just let engineers in? I understand why, but that's not right. Like I'll have that
Well,
conversation.
you're exactly right. When it comes down to it, and the more Catholic, Joe, I become, the more deeply I go into the faith. You know what I find? Yes, of course. It's not a matter of, let's say, right or left. That's unfortunately the way they pigeonhole us in America. Oh, you're right. Or you're left. Or that issue makes you a right winger. Oh, that issue makes you a communist. If Ann Coulter heard you and I talk on this show of the way we do about economics, free market economics that we both believe in, okay, she would call us communists because we don't agree with that knee jerk conservative Republican Chamber of Commerce BS that you get from Fox News. No, companies can't just do what they want, that type of thing, okay? But I'm with you, man. No, it's not left or right. When I look at the border, like you said, I could have a conversation with you. When I look at the economy, I'm going to have a conversation with you. It's going to include labor, Mr. Mr. Sean Hannity, Miss Ann Coulter. It's going to include labor and the way labor is treated in America. All these things. The problem is, Joe, not the problem. I agree with you. I could be a Democrat from 80 years ago on economics because they weren't wacko yet. Maybe a little bit more hands-on government policies. Okay. Generally speaking, fiscally conservative. But then with FDR, that all went out the window. Okay. But I could see myself agreeing with Democrats on a number of economic or labor related issues. But Joe, they're not there anymore. They're
No,
calling themselves, they're
well, that's
calling themselves socialists now, Joe.
and we've tried to get Joe. We said this before the election. This is not the Democratic Party of your grandfather. No one listens. It's the same thing. We just rattled off a number of lessons learned from 2021. No one listens. No one cares. They just frankly choose to not look in that direction, and they'll still vote for this guy.
Right.
America is in deep trouble. Deep trouble. I mean, just let's talk about it fiscally speaking. The gas tax is a regressive tax on the poor. It affects the poor. I'll be honest with you. I can afford my gas, Joe. I don't like paying more. I can afford it. Poor people who have large commutes or use their car for business or vans for business can't.
Right.
Or working people can't. It is, but they'll ignore that too.
Right.
We live in a society. No one looks at the world as it is.
Right.
No one. They
I
have
agree.
this, like, this is why the metaverse, we did a show on that, is going to be a huge hit. Because
Joe, metaverse is going to be Barry Bonds standing at home plate, knocking the ball into San Francisco Bay. It's an out and out grand slam. The same way you said, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. The transgender issue, all of that stuff. That's a political winner to the point where Republicans are starting to soften on that. We see it happening in front of our face. You've said it. What'd you say it a couple months ago? You said that's going to be a winner for Republicans, even though, of course, we know that it's all a bunch of BS, transgenderism and the whole 9 yards. Republicans are going to embrace it. Well, I'm fiscally conservative. I'm pro-life, but equal rights for everybody. Like that type of thing. That's what you're going to
same
hear.
rights as individuals. But like, again, this is not even bashing people. Like, first of all, it's like that issue alone, not too long ago. Forget about what I say. Let's look at what science says.
Right.
Psychiatric, like the psychiatric department of Johns Hopkins said that people who do that have a mental disorder. This is Johns Hopkins.
Right.
Like this is, again, we don't choose to listen to Johns Hopkins, and we listen to Rachel Maddow. This is where we're at. This is why the country's a mess. Frankly, I'll be honest with you. Turn off the news. Listen to Joe and Joe, but turn off the news. I mean,
always listen to Joe and Joe.
But read. And also, I say this all the time. I say this to my brother often. Don't listen to what people say. Look at what they do. Look at the fruit of their choices. Look at the fruit of this past year politically. It's bad. It's bad fruit. Do you know
Right.
that I read something today that cities in America, the level of violence is at a 20-year high? That's your policies. How is that good? How is that good?
Well,
And
you
here's the thing. I mean, are we going to support this? Vote
well,
for
well,
this?
no, well, no, well, in the cities they do. One of the things, Joe, I read recently was Hispanic Americans eventually, and I think very soon, are going to become the bad guys for the Democrats
Dude,
because
that should
Hispanic
put
American.
terror into the DNC, Joe. If
Well,
that happens, they're done. They're
Well, no,
done.
because well, you're right because they've let all these Hispanic Americans across the border, thinking in their mind they were going to enslave these people. Okay, by misinforming them, by bribing them with government programs. Okay, Hispanic Americans are like everybody else. Once they get the right information, okay, and let's face it, Joe, most Hispanic Americans who have come across that border, they're Catholic and they don't want to hear anything about abortion. And they don't want to hear about two guys lying down with each other, okay, as it says in scripture, or lying with each other. They don't want to hear any of that stuff. And when you're promoting it, let's say the mother hears this and she thinks in her mind, this politician that is asking for my vote wants to promote that in the public school to my little son. Well, guess what? The projection is that in a very short period of time, Republicans and conservatives will capture more than 50% of the Hispanic vote in
Well,
America.
then I'll be
And
honest with you.
guess
If
what?
that ever
Guess who's
happens,
going to
it's
be
over.
But
It's
here's the thing,
over.
Joe. Guess who's going to be calling for deportation then? The Democrats.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, if that ever happened, I mean, like, and frankly, I mean, we've seen a spike in the African American vote as well. I think that's going to continue. Actually, maybe not to like levels of over 50%, but I do think that will continue. If we ever got like conservatives got over 50% of the Hispanic vote in America, dude, don't even
Stay
show
home on
up.
election day because it's over.
It's over. They're the only
Right.
people who have children in this country. I mean, that's a conversation for another
Well,
day.
not for
Well,
nothing. Just to give you a quick little anecdotal evidence of that. I'm walking in the parking garage the other day, and I'm walking down, and I see a guy and his wife who are obviously Hispanic. Okay, he's got two kids in his arms. The mom's got one little girl on one side. She's holding her little sister. The little girl's holding her little sister, and they got the carrot, and the mom's got the stroller in her hand. I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and this couple looked like they were in their mid-30s, mid to late 30s. Okay, that's Hispanics in America. See, they get it, Joe. Big families, big families. That's what the left is deathly afraid of. Definitely. But let's talk. Go ahead.
well, I just want to say what Hollis concludes on all this. She gives her list, and then she basically said, when Americans speak up and stand together, we win, whether at school boards or city council meetings or in businesses, in the streets, in the courtrooms, or at the polls. When Americans take the offensive and tell those in power what we will and will not stand for, we win. For too long, those in control of the government, our schools and our media have counted on the exploitation of our trust
Right.
and poorly informed populations, which we have sadly, or brainwashed populations, because that's what the media is doing and has been doing. Things have changed. Millions have opened their eyes. The elites don't like it. And that tells you plenty. You know, it's funny. I was reading something in First Things recently, and they talked about the Arab Spring when Obama was the president and how his administration basically lauded the internet, the social media sites, because basically that's how those people got information. And that's what sparked that quasi revolution that almost did something. And of course, Obama didn't back it, but that's another story for another day.
Right.
But then they flipped when Donald Trump won the presidency, because the same thing happened. Trump circumvented the news, went to Twitter, spoke to people directly, and he won. And
Right.
that's why he won. And it comes down to this. We allow ourselves to digest the garbage that they choose to tell us. We
Right.
don't think for ourselves. We don't look into things. We don't self-examine our own behavior and juxtapose it with the consequences of those policies, which are bad.
Right.
I mean, you look at a city like Baltimore. How did that woman, what was her name? Kim Klacik, case like that.
Classic. Yeah.
How did she lose? How did a woman who basically is from that neighborhood, after 50 years of devastation, not win? I mean, it's mind-boggling. It defies all logic because the machine.
Well, the machine has everybody convinced that if you don't vote for the machine, your life is going to fall apart. Now, let's remember, Joe, some people, look, I never got successful at the things I wanted to. Okay. I'm not going to lie. I've been a worker most of the time. I tried some things. I was never successful. Okay. But at the end of the day, I don't need the government. I have enough. You do. Many of everybody here that talks to us or that listens to us, we're all the same. You know what? When we fail, we say, all right, let me get up. I'm going to go to work. I don't need the government. They don't have to pay for this. They don't have to pay for that. Just get out of my way. Get out of my way. And I'm going to go make my own life happen. Okay. I have God and I have an able body. I could go out and earn a living. So, as we like to say, Joe, to the left on this show, screw you, creepo. Get out of my way. All right. So, having said that, there are many, as you know, people in the world, and I'm talking about people, Joe, who make money. I'm not talking about people who just, let's say, that are being bribed by welfare payments and things like that. I'm talking about people who have money who feed off this corrupt system. Those people aren't going to do what you and I do, Joe. They can't go out and go earn an honest living because they're not feeding off a system. They actually have to go out and receive a just wage for what they do. But in the cities, that's why I'm bringing it up. What you have is so many people are so entrenched. They have such entrenched interests in what's going on. That's why they didn't vote for Kim Klacik. You have the people who are feeding off the system, all right, that are wealthy and want more wealth. And then you have people who just are very dependent on government. You are absolutely right. That woman, she should be in the United States House of Representatives.
Oh,
But real
how?
quick, I want you to keep going. I just want to give a shout out. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We have all of our regulars and then some in the chat room. We have female Casey Royals fan, Collins here, Mary's here, David. David, I haven't seen before. If I missed you before, David, I apologize. Welcome. Remember, if you're and Jonathan will post it in the chat room. If you are a paid member and you want to join us for a little bit more personal conversation after the show, there'll be a paid membership chat room open, and we could, like I said, have a little bit more of a personal chat. Also, Suzanne, Donald, haven't seen Donald in a while. Hey, Donald, AG's with us. Michael's with us. Good to see you, Mike. Kat, love Kat. We love you all. Christine, my buddy Christine. So we got a lot of people going on right now in the chat room. So Joe, and really, that's the thing. 2021, according to Hollis, is a dumpster fire. But everything we're talking about here is we need to take 2022 and we need to, like, what's he say? The elites are opening their eye, or people are having their eyes opened. Okay, that's what we're all about. That's why Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, that's why they take down guys like us, because they don't want people opening their eyes. I don't care if you're Hispanic and you finally get wind of what the Democrat Party stands for and you find it abhorrent, okay? I don't care if you're black and you're like Kanye West and you finally open your eyes and you realize the Democrat Party really does want you to kill your children because they don't like more black and brown babies in the world. When people open their eyes to these things, Joe, that leads to hope. In this world, in time and space, in history, okay? Obviously, we have the hope of eternal life, but we're talking about having a better world in the meantime. And hope is a big thing, Joe Rossinello. It's a big thing.
Well, let's talk about that because this comes from WND News Source, and they basically put out an article, Finding Real Hope in the World Gone Mad. We talked about the stuff that was fairly mad in 2021. So let's talk about hope. This is what they had to say. Let's just get a little taste of the article and we can have a good discussion. The most fundamental and ultimately consequential war being fought within the U.S. today is the one being waged against the American mind, with a never-ending wave of assaults literally targeting Americans' core values, religious faith, historical memory, love of country, happiness, indeed, their very sanity. Largely large numbers of Americans, young and old, are finding life hopeless and not worth living. We'll talk about why that is. And yet America, more than any other nation on earth, has always been a land of opportunity and freedom, and most of all, hope Millions of immigrants fleeing genocide and tyranny have regarded America as nothing less than their promised land. How true that is. But why are people hopeless? And I could tell you this right now, because we've thrown God out of the culture. You see, God gives hope. When you have God, you have hope. Now, what's another sign of hope? Children. People who have hope have children. It's a sign that people have hope for the future. And what's happening in America? People aren't getting married. People aren't having children. People are having frigging, to be honest with you, the suicide rate is up in certain demographics. You talk about people who have like opioid addictions are all over the country. That's not a sign of people who have hope, Joe Pasillo. And the
Right.
big part about that is this: it's God. We've thrown God out. You throw God out, you have no hope.
See, well, that's the thing. We need to help people. Look, Joe, as part of what we do evangelization, yes, there are some people who have emailed us or whatever and said, "Hey, I'm seriously thinking about coming back to the Catholic Church. Thank you guys." And that's a wonderful thing. And ultimately, that's the greatest thing. We want people to go to heaven, okay? But in this world, people have to understand, all right? People of goodwill, maybe not necessarily Catholic, but those people out there who know that everything we're being spoon fed by Hollywood, by the media, by MSNBC, by CNN, the New York Times, all of it, in the educational establishments, all of it is just nothing but a bunch of bunk that's just designed to ruin you in this life. Even if you're a stone cold atheist, you should still be in favor of Judeo Christian values in America. Okay? Because the bottom line is this: it makes for a better society. Okay? When you have personal responsibility, when you sacrifice for
Can't
the
have
other.
that, Joe.
Well, that goes
That
without
you see,
saying.
this is
Listen,
like you're 100% right, but right there, can't have personal responsibility.
right.
Anytime, I always get a chuckle out of the far left when someone basically gives some type of rule. First of all, you can't have a society without any boundaries. That is absolutely positively a maxim.
Can
Like
I
that
ask
is
you a
just
question? Can I ask you a question real quick, Joe, along those lines?
sure.
Can, let's say, some of these atheists who claim not to believe in the rules, like the Catholic Church, their God is just a God of rules. I'd like to say, but is your society going to have rules? And where
Well,
does
they
your
clearly
authority come?
do.
Do you think that you can make a society that's completely libertarian? Okay. In other words, with minimal rules.
Dude, that's
No, let me
called
tell you,
chaos.
human beings, listen, ever since the fall, which means from the beginning, okay, human beings have shown their propensity to commit very, very evil acts.
Dude, look
And
what
you think
happened
you're
in
going to have a
Seattle,
society
Joe.
without rules? Go ahead, Joe.
What was that zone that zone in society in Seattle like a couple years ago that like that
Oh,
during the
the one of the stupid names that they come up
well
with.
whatever. I mean, 3 people died, 2 of which were teenagers. I
There's your lack of rules.
I mean, that's my point. But what I
Right.
was getting at is anytime somebody puts down some type of directive, you're a fascist.
Right.
You're a fascist.
Right.
No, society has rules. Just like any society, historically speaking, you can't just do what you Chaz. There it is. Somebody, the
Yes. Thank
Chaz.
you, Kat.
There you go. But I mean, like, it's just the way it works. You have to have police. Why? Because
Right.
people want to do bad things. It's everywhere. Rich communities, poor communities. There has to be boundaries.
Right.
And yet, anytime somebody puts forth like a boundary, you're a fascist. Because just what you said, I do not recognize authority and I take no personal responsibility for
Right.
my actions, which I own. I own. Eh, right there.
Joe,
Problem.
Joe, one of the reasons why, and this might sound a little judgmental. I'm not trying to be, okay? But there are people in this world, as we speak here at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello, in the breach Sunday night, all right, on Frontline TV. Like this video, share this video, particularly on Facebook, okay? And subscribe and tell your friends to subscribe. Please do so. You're right about the personal responsibility. the fact is, and this, Joe, I don't have any way of proving this, and I'm not going to lie and say that I do, but in my gut, I know that there is a rather large block of Americans who, if you told them, listen, you could have the drugs you want, you could have all the sex you want, your abortions will be paid for, okay? You're going to go to work, let's say 7 or 8 hours a day. You're not going to make much money, but everything you're going to do, you're going to rent. You're not going to own anything. You're not going to be responsible for anything other than putting in a few hours a day at work, maybe 5 days a week. You're going to have no power, okay? And you're certainly not going to have any kids. What you will have is, before you go into the grave, you're going to have one big party, okay? You'll have all the drugs and sex you want, and you'll be a slave. And there are many people, Joe, even if they were told that if the word slave was used to describe what they're going to be made into, they would say, bring it on.
Joe,
I don't
what
want
do
to,
you think the
I don't want
welfare
any of that
state is?
nonsense.
That's a slave state. What do you think this universal income is?
Oh,
They're
no, Joe,
buying-
I agree with you, but you got to combine that. That's what I'm saying to you. That to create the dependent class to begin with, they instituted welfare. Okay, fine. We know what kind of success that's been for the last however many years, however many decades. But now, Joe, it's like they're ratcheting it up. So now you'll get a welfare check, universal basic income. That's what Andrew Yang said, or whatever. You'll get that. But we're also going to give you the drugs and the sex and the abortions and the contraception.
Well,
and
aren't
all
they
of it.
doing that now?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just
like,
to say
in
it's going to
terms
get
of, like,
worse.
abortion, like, to a degree. I mean, you're seeing legalized marijuana. I mean, you walk around New York City, people are smoking joints like they smoke cigarettes now. It's everywhere, everywhere. Someone told me between Penn Station and Port Authority, there's actually a truck, like a food truck, but they sell weed.
Yeah.
2 different people told me that.
Joe, they're outside my building all the time.
There you go. I mean, abortion is legal right now up until the minute a child is born. It's barbaric.
Right. Well,
I
in
mean,
New York City,
I
anyway.
mean, let's be honest. We're already there because people just want to do. There is no, when you say the word personal, the 2 words, personal responsibility, and
Yep.
no, I'll do what I want. And frankly, I will take no responsibility. And that's why we're at where we're at. And this is why I'm going to tell you this right now. We've talked about it a million times. Politically speaking, that's not going to be the solution for America.
No.
Our problems are cultural and spiritual.
Yes.
The heart has to change. People have to, basically, there's a book. You ever read The Jungle by Saint? It's an old book about the meatpacking district. They made you read it in high school. But it was basically a pitch for socialism. But what it did do was it exposed a lot of the abuses in the meatpacking district in Chicago. Anyway, it was I believe he was like a Ukrainian immigrant working there. It was horrible. And then he goes to the country and he just bathes in a stream after he was working in like a disgusting factory.
Mhm.
That's what our society, it needs to detox. Like, we're just so engrossed in things that basically weigh us down that we're not seeing clearly.
Joe, talk about not seeing clearly. Let's call it the way it is. Okay. Now, most of our audience here at the front line with Joe and Joe, Zach is in there, Moon Peach, Mary, a whole bunch of others. We're mostly Catholic. I would venture to say maybe all Catholic. Joe, the problem is this. You hit the nail on the head. And the Protestant conservative Republicans, mostly evangelical, okay, think that we could find a political solution to our problems. And when we, as Roman Catholics, as a group, en masse, tell that culture, okay, and again, the evangelicals will be friends with us on a lot of things, okay, but they won't be on some very important things. But my point is, but when we tell the culture, you know what? People are going to contracept. We don't have to promote contraception, and nor should it be a right. Women are going to have abortions, okay? Back alleys, whatever you want to call them. They call them back alleys, okay? They were abortions. They were illegal abortions, okay? They're going to do that, okay? But we don't have to promote it, okay? In fact, we can make it illegal in the States, I would think. And a lot of things. People are going to do drugs, Joe. When we grew up, it was illegal to do drugs. If you walk down the street smoking a joint, you got arrested, okay?
No doubt.
All right? We don't have to promote it. The problem is, Joe, not making the left making the left know we are making the rules now, and we're going to rescind all your rules. Drugs, illegal. Abortion, illegal. Contraception, states have the right to ban it. States have the right to ban pornography, and go right down the list. You know who your biggest problem is going to come from, Joe, if you propose that? Conservative evangelical Christians. That's who it's going to come from. Many of whom are very good people and would agree with us on those very things. Unfortunately, conservative evangelical Christians, and here's another big problem. Many Catholics, maybe 40 or 50%, would say you're going too far. What do you think?
Well, politically, you would be going too far. That's a loser because, frankly, Catholics contracept. You're not supposed to, but Catholics contracept. I mean, period, end of story. Most people don't understand the teaching behind that. Meaning, like, if you're contracepting, you're not, it's a selfish act. And here's the thing. So some people say, well, who cares? I'm getting pleasure. My wife's getting pleasure. Yeah, it's selfish. Who cares? Well, I'll tell you why that you should care. That selfish act, when it's not open to life, will bleed into other aspects of your marriage and could ultimately destroy your marriage.
Joe, back that up, Joe. Back that up with the statistics.
Well, with the numbers. Look at the divorce numbers. Why is Hollywood rampant with divorce? They should ultimately, because they have everything. They're all good-looking people. They're all rich. What? They have everything. Why do they get divorced? Because it's just selfishness. Selfishness destroys love.
Right.
And a contraceptive mentality destroys marriage because it bleeds into other areas. It's not just about the act itself. You see, the church, there is wisdom in the church, 2,000 years.
Right.
And sadly, when people look at the church, they look at drunk father, whatever, who did X or did Y. They're not looking at the fruit of the Catholic Church, because if you look, you will find it.
Oh, Joe, listen, you're big for saying at the front line with Joe and Joe, if you're truly seeking what the good, the true, and the beautiful, you'll find it. And if you're truly seeking, like mentioned Christine in the chat room, Joe, I got tired of my parish. I didn't think I was going to go to a TLM. To be quite frank with you, I just wanted a more disciplined, reverent parish community. Okay. And we ended up at the TLM. All right. Christine goes there also. Okay. Joe, if it's all out there, if you could find it, how many good priests that we know? Okay. Who are not, let's say, TLM priests. Okay. How many good priests do we know? Very, very, what would you call holy priests? They help us. They guide us. All right. Everything in mass is disciplined, is reverent. Okay. If you seek out these people in the same way you're discussing, Joe, if you seek out the truth, okay, you'll find it. The problem is that takes effort. You got to roll up your sleeves. You got to get out there. You got to say, okay, I like a football game, Joe, just as much as the next guy. Okay. Sunday, I'm going to go here. Or I'm going to go there. I'm not watching football this week. Or when I get home, rather than go home from work and crack open a beer and sit down and watch Sean Hannity, I'm going to go out and I'm going to explore this, that, or the other thing. Problem is, even that level of comfort or discomfort is too much for some people. And that's why we're in the boat we're in, Joe.
Well, people don't understand. It's not just about an activity, church. You go to church to get grace. The sacraments give life. You see, again, people don't understand the faith. Even Catholics don't understand the faith. You can't live the life that Christ called you to without the sacraments.
Right.
Like, it's a fact. Why is it? Okay, we just had New Year's Eve. I saw today, I was driving in the morning with my wife and kids after coming from mass. You see everyone running. It's the second day of the year. Everybody's jogging. Talk to me in 2 months. Talk to me in a month.
Joe, I'll talk to you in 2 days.
Why is it that people have the best of intentions but don't follow through? It's grace. You see, grace is contained in the sacraments. And Catholics, I'll talk about Catholics. I'm Catholic. If you've never encountered grace, it's just talk. But it's not just talk. You see, they don't know why they do things. Go to confession. Receive the Eucharist in the state of grace. Go to confession regularly, once a month. Takes 5 minutes. Pray. Read scripture every day. Takes 10 minutes. Pray the rosary. Takes 15 minutes. If you can go to daily mass, do it. You will change your life because God gives you assistance. Why is it that Catholic marriages that are sacramental, which means you're not contracepting, you're open to life, 3% of them end in divorce? That's
Right.
not dogma. That's sociology. That's statistics. Why is it that there's a 50% divorce rate and couples that go to church, just go to church together, that divorce rate goes down to 20%?
Right.
What? That's not dogmatic because there's grace
Because
there.
there's something going on that goes beyond just any sort of like worldly explanation. So when you say couples that go to mass every week, couples that don't act selfish, like you said, Joe, there's a lot of people, a lot of couples out there, they don't care. They'll say, I want my husband to treat me like that. And the husband says, I want my wife. They don't care. Okay. They'll do it.
Yeah,
Again,
but they'll care when they're divorced.
well,
And
that's what I mean, because like you like to say on the show, Joe, all the time, their eyes aren't open. They think that that's a isolated act that's not going to spill over into the rest of their lives. But let me ask you this. In the most intimate thing that you could, you're selfish, how does that not lead to more selfishness? How logically can you not think in your mind, or how blind do you have to be to not realize? Don't you know that if you do this now in this situation, it will bleed over to the rest of your life, regardless of what you think in the moment? It will bleed out into the rest of your life and the rest of your relationship with your wife, and they don't see it, as you said, Joe, until it's too late and the divorce lawyer's on speed dial.
And to be honest with you, divorce is one of the primary drivers of poverty in
Yeah.
America. And this is, again, it's painting by numbers. Painting by numbers. I say it all the time, every new, like as we approach the new year. You want to change your life, become a practicing Catholic. You will change your life. I'm not saying they're going to put you on the cover of People magazine. I'm not saying that you're going to be rich. What I am saying is your quality of life will be raised. Period. End of story.
No,
And they'll
I
say,
agree.
oh, I know tons of Catholics. Their life stinks. Talk to me about people who practice their faith. Just
Right.
because you're a baptized Catholic doesn't mean you're a practicing Catholic. And if you're a practicing Catholic, I'm telling you this right now, I know many of them. Frankly, their lives speak for themselves.
Right.
You don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything.
I agree. And let's be clear. And let's be clear, Joe. That doesn't mean that our lives are perfect, but what it does do, I will say this. When your eyes are open and you're trying, okay, particularly in marriage, particularly in family, things are a lot easier. I do want to make a point, though, Joe Arsenal, because I find it hysterical. So we have Tate Brown in the chat room said, I want a Braveheart battle in a field against the globalists. I want to say, listen, we'll be right there with you, ready to take Longshanks down. Anytime you want to go, Tate, we're right there. Joe, I want to just, I think this is a good quote from the article about finding real hope in a world gone mad. And I think it's Joe. Again, I always like to say we're Catholic. We want people in the Catholic Church, not Bob's church down south of Dallas, Texas. Okay, after he split off from Joe's church, after Joe split off from Kevin's church, and not that. I'm sorry, that's not what Christ wanted. Nobody in the evangelical Protestant community is going to tell me that that is what Christ wanted. 45,000 different denominations. Okay, so I say this with love towards them. We want everybody to come into the Catholic Church, but as a fundamental organizing principle of America, America, all right?
I was just going to say that.
If you really cared about your country and you said, okay, I'm still going to be Protestant, or I'm still going to be a Jew, or I'm still going to be a Muslim, okay? Here's the difference, though. If you really cared about your country, this is what WND says. What is the basis of this mysterious and wonderful hope? The stark otherworldly truth, unlikely to be uttered except in a Christian publication, is that the Christian faith is and has been from the very beginning of the American experience the true basis of American hope. It is the progressive abandonment of that faith that has led directly to the madness, hopelessness, and increasing tyranny Americans are now suffering. Joe, amen. That's spot on, brother. You can't get any more truth than that right there.
Listen, all sin, and again, sin as in what we're supposed to do, right and wrong, it's written on the human heart. It's written on the human heart. What happens is as we bathe in sin, our hearts get hard and black. And when that happens, it affects your whole entire life. You're depressed. Your life is devoid of joy.
Right.
But ultimately, people who want to follow this progressive whatever, ultimately, any type of sinful act, whether it's men chasing after women excessively outside of marriage, whether it's same-sex attraction, whatever you want to do that's sinful, biblically sinful, sinful to the Jews, sinful to Christians, sinful to in the Muslim world. When you chase after those type of things in life, money, power, we can go on and on. It ends in a dead end. It ends
Absolutely right.
it's a fact. It is factual. You know,
Right.
this is what people don't do. In business school, you have to read case studies. And why do you do that? Because you study a situation, somebody basically achieves something. So you study it and figure out how they did it in real world terms.
Right.
Well, how about we do this, people? Let's look at people who have successful lives. They're happy. They have fruitful marriages, 50 years married, kids like their parents, grandchildren. You pay your bills. You're not taking pills to go to sleep. People who have successful lives, what are they doing? Let's study that and think to ourselves for a moment. Why don't we try this? Because this is what successful people are doing.
Right.
Again, let's choose not to look there. Let's double down on our stupidity. Let's continue to do the wrong thing and think somehow the same consequences are not going to apply to us.
Right. Like somehow
That's what the world does, Joe.
right, and somehow you're not going to be affected by the moral law in any way or the natural law. You're not going to be negatively affected. Let's say, for argument's sake, if you're contracepting, if you have a gumad, that's a mistress for those of you out there who don't know Italian slang. Like all these things, you think, well, it's not such a big deal. My wife doesn't know about it. Not a big deal. If we contracept, it's not a big deal. If my daughter goes out 15 years old, if she's on contraception, it's none of it's a big deal until it becomes a big deal. And statistically, like you said, Joe, aside from being on the path to hell, okay, which we want to encourage people to get off of the path
There's no
to hell.
hell,
Okay?
Joe.
Well, no,
There's
I know.
no hell.
The hell is for all you judgmental people.
That's no
Only people
we
in hell
shouldn't judge. But that's not judging.
Right,
That's
it's not
just
judgment.
objective truth.
Hey, listen,
There's
Joe,
right and there's wrong.
whenever I hear anybody talk about hell, my response is always the same, especially a Christian. In other words, that might say that you can't bring up hell. I would say Jesus did an awful lot.
Well, dude, I got news for you. The path to hell is hell, Joe. People who are going to hell are miserable. They're miserable. And people who are going to heaven are not.
Joe, who was the poet or the I forgot who it was that wrote, or one of the lines was describing the group of people approaching the gates of hell. Maybe those in the chat room can help us out at the front line with Joe and Joe. Dancing at the gates of hell. I heard that. Her name's Mary Ann. She's a woman I met in the pro-life movement. Okay, very, very faithful woman. I don't want to dox her, so I'm not going to say where I met her. She said that to me one time, and it struck me. And what you just said, Joe, reminded me of that. Okay, yes, these people that are going through life who think they're happy, they're really miserable.
Joe, they don't think they're not happy.
They're dancing. They're dancing. They're dancing at the gates of hell. Yeah, when they get to the gates of hell, they're literally dancing their way through the gate. No, they think that everything they've done has made them happy, but the problem is, okay, when that gate shuts, it's shut for good. It's I wish people would understand that. I wish people weren't so cavalier about their view of hell. I wish people weren't so cavalier about their view of sin. And that's what we're really talking about tonight. Well, I'll just do what I want to do. And if you judge me, you're the sinner. That's what you hear from people. Okay.
Well, we
And the
don't
bottom line is
judge
like
you
it's
saying
a
you're going to
train
go
wreck.
to hell, but what you can say is what you're doing is objectively wrong.
Right.
And here's the thing, you know it. You know it. And here's another thing. Sin takes away your joy. It takes
Right.
away your peace. This is a fact.
Joe,
It's
you
a
have
fact.
Joe, let me cut you off for a second. Just a little heart to heart here, okay? Without being long-winded. When I was living a sinful life, which was most of my life, okay? But before I was in my late 30s, okay, and I was living, let's say, a very liberated lifestyle, let's say as far as, women and all that kind of stuff, right? Partying, all that kind of stuff. Joe, I didn't realize it till my eyes were open. I was living exactly what you just described. Now, was God still there? Was he there and present enough to compel me to pray even in the midst of my mortal sins? Absolutely. Was he there nudging me to get back to confession? Absolutely. But Joe, let me tell you something. These were not open, my friend. They were not open because, as you always say, sin makes you blind. Then you think you're happy. You think you start to get comfortable in it. And let me tell you something, you are then in a swamp that is so difficult to get out of. And you can only do it by grace. And the reason I'm bringing it up, Joe, in America, with abortion and say SSA and transgenderism and all this nonsense, Joe, as a nation, we're in that swamp. And if we don't open our eyes and ask God to pull us out of it, Joe, we're going nowhere. We're going
Well, the
absolutely
thing is,
nowhere.
this is where politically, I think a friend of mine said this. I've said this on the show a number of times. The horse is out of the barn. I mean, David Carlin in the Catholic thing talks about like the progressive principle, and that is basically sexual liberty.
Oh,
That happened in the 60s. This country didn't operate under those like guidelines, social norms. The only way, and clearly it's bore bad fruit. I mean,
right,
listen,
right.
look at marriages, look at the effect of the divorce rate on children. I mean, we could go on and on about the bad fruit of sexual liberation
Right.
after, say, 1968 in America, on and on. The abortion mentality. You could talk about contraception, basically, once again, which leads to divorce.
Right.
Again, statistically speaking, this is not
Mhm.
dogmatic talk. It leads to divorce. You could talk about all of it. Ultimately, to change that, people, I'll be honest with you, talk is never going to do it. I've said this time and time again. America has to hit a pain point. We're not there yet. I think it could get much worse.
No, we started this conversation talking about 2021 being a dumpster fire. True, but I think you're right. If you
It's got to
think
hit
that
a
was
pain
bad,
point.
wait till what's coming down the road.
Because ultimately, when we get to that pain point, all of this other nonsense, they'll still be true believers in this nonsense. There have always been fringe people. Right now, we're the fringe, frankly.
Jesus was the fringe. John
But
the
what I'm
Baptist
talking
was the
about is
fringe.
after we hit that pain point and we're going in that direction, all of this other nonsense, they will get shouted down. They will get shouted down. It will basically be like, sorry, we're not interested.
Right.
Look at what's going on. Look at my life. We're not there yet because people don't listen. They simply don't. It's sad. They don't. You could say something, it could be so logical, it could be so objectively true. They don't listen. What they understand is suffering.
Well,
I say it time and time again. The prodigal son, when he goes off to the land, I'm sure his father told him, why are you doing this? You have everything here. Nope, I'm going to do it on my own.
right.
Guess what? He wound up face down in the mud. And then what does it say? He came to his senses.
Right.
And I will go back to my father and I will say, I don't deserve to come back to you. That's what made him open his eyes. We're not there yet.
We're not. We're
going to
getting
get
there. We're definitely getting there. There's no question about it. If we don't do something, real quick, Okay, we're coming up on the hour, but we're this isn't a crusade show tonight, so we don't have restrictions for all you guys out there. We're not going to be too long-winded, but just to run it down, this is what we're up against, and this is what we have to fight against. Because Joe mentioned David Carlin's article in the Catholic thing about the fundamental progressive principle, okay, which is sexual liberation. So the bottom line is this, and these are the things. I mean, if you want a checklist of things that need to be turned around, okay, either done away with or really like a big push against. All right, the value of abortion, the value of contraception, the value of sex education in the public schools. Therefore, what they can't get into your knucklehead, they'll try to drill into your daughters or your sons' knuckleheads. Okay, through the school system. So we know that. Okay. Yeah, and it goes on and on, but that's primarily what it is. And if we don't do something about these things, guess what, Joe? If you don't educate the next generation of kids, what the hell kind of country are you going to have? What are you going to have? It's going to be infinitely worse than it is right now.
Well, you're right. I mean, because what I have seen just from my own observation is a lot of kids in like my era who came from Catholic homes, the culture still was bad. They deviated, but they had a point of reference in their corner of their eye to kind of come back full circle. I've met
Right.
many people that have gone down that road. These kids aren't going to have that.
Right.
You see, families are falling apart. They're falling apart. They're not going to have the grandma, the dad, the mom. And frankly, it's going to get dark.
Right.
I actually really believe that. And I say this time and time again. The most important thing you can impart to your children, more important than high SAT scores, more important than getting into a good college, more important to promoting athletics or music or theater to your children is their Catholic faith, because it will guide all of their decisions.
Mm-hmm.
As a Catholic, the greatest thing about it, well, one is you acknowledge Jesus Christ, but it guides, if you're truly practicing your faith, everything you do. And it's, to be honest with you, a path that is safe. It's a path that leads to heaven. It is a path that leads to happiness here. You don't have that, Joe. I don't care if you went to MIT. I don't care if you make $1 million a year. I don't care if you play pro football. I got news for you. You're a boat on the ocean. You are not anchored in anything, and
Right.
you will flounder ultimately. And that's another thing. Parents, they promote all these other things. Basically, even if you hand your kids a huge trust fund full of money, if you don't form that kid properly, they'll piss it away.
Right.
They will piss it away.
No,
They'll
Joe.
make bad decisions. They'll marry the wrong people. They'll get involved in stupid things, waste their money on ridiculous nonsense, and it means nothing.
And you'll end up as my 82-year-old Italian mother would say, hey, and now you end up a miserable. All right. Because that's how you're going to end up. I will say this. Colin, our buddy Colin's in the chat room. He said, truth, Joe and Joe, how I miss my grandparents. I learned so much from them. Colin, that strikes me because of this. Sounds like something that somebody, let's say, we would say, yeah, when somebody teaches you something, you miss that kind of thing. But I was going to just take it in a little bit of a different direction, Colin. My father, okay, God rest his soul. I actually went to his grave today. My mother stayed with us this weekend, and after Mass, we took a ride, and I, to go visit my
Where's
father's
he
grave.
buried, dude?
He's over at in East Hanover at Gate of Heaven.
Yeah, all my family, they're on by Father Lewis, 139. It's the cemetery off the Parkway.
Oh yeah. And then a lot of people are here in Holy Cross in North Arlington. A lot of people from North.
I got people there too.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I bring it up, Colin, and everybody out there at the front line with Joe Pasillo and Joe Ressinello way in the breach, is that my father, and I think this speaks to our conversation about having to care about a person's soul, but also people who, even though they might be off a little bit in that regard, still understand order, still understand right and wrong, good and evil. My father wasn't the most virtuous guy. Let me put it like that. Okay. My father made sure we went to Mass because he made sure my mother took us to Mass. My father sacrificed a lot to send us to Seton Hall Prep. Okay, when me and my brother were kids, that was very expensive because when we both got to high school, that was $5,000 in 1980 to send us to high school for the two of us. Okay, and then and sacrifice that, and then my sister. The reason why I'm bringing it up is this: my father, I pray for his soul every day. Okay, every single day, and only God can plumb the depths of the human heart. And I have hope that my father was saved. Okay, believe me when I tell you. But as far as even when you're kind of off, and this is why I'm bringing it up, Joe, even people, let's say, who we would love to come in the Catholic Church, we know they're not, let's say, acting completely morally in their lives. Many times we sin. I'm not being judgmental. But even on a worldly level, and this is why I brought up my father, you know the value of something good. That's why I brought up Seton Hall Prep and a good education, a Catholic education, or going to Mass because it's good for you. Being an altar boy, make sure you go and be the altar boy because it's good for you. It instills discipline, okay? All these different things. I'm only using this in an analogous way, Joe, with our nation. Not everybody, Joe, is going to convert to the Catholic faith, and not everybody's going to heaven. But if we could at least recognize certain fundamental principles that are opposite of this nonsense that David Carlin's talking about, well, then we can at least have a much better place to live and at least have a much better shot of evangelizing that culture because we're not so mired into the swamp. Am I making sense? Or
No,
am
but
I
you
going
do.
in the
But you
wrong-
know what it is? The fruit is there. The bad fruit. It's obvious. Listen, Joe Biden owns this nonsense. Sorry.
Yeah.
Why do people continue to support the nonsense? Because they don't want to change, Joe. You see, that's why it's not a political battle. It's a heart battle. Why don't they want to change? They like their stuff, the sinful stuff. I'm not
Right.
changing. I'm not changing. I'm not. Be damned the consequences. And this is where we're at. That's why, to be honest with you, to a degree, it doesn't matter who the president is. To a degree. Now, that like I want obviously a conservative president. Don't misunderstand me. But my point is, it's a revolution of the heart.
Right.
People, Americans, and that's not going to happen until we reach the right pain point. Because people are not going to listen. They're simply not. I've learned this, Joe.
I agree, Joe. Listen, what if you told, all right, and then we're probably going to draw this down to an end. If you told people in hindsight, well, America should never have fought a civil war. We should have listened to the British who did outlaw abortion, slavery. Okay. William Wilberforce and others who railed against slavery in the British Empire. Okay. We should have listened to them. We should have listened to the abolitionists in New England. Okay. In other words, that we should have abolished slavery. And what happened? Because as you're saying, and I'm speaking to what you were just saying, all right? Because people needed the pain because they didn't want to hear it. And what did you get? A civil war that took the lives of
600,000 people died.
600,000 people.
I mean,
You
like,
needed the pain in order to get rid of the
and
sin.
that's how the mentality of people. It's sad. It's the story of man. And there's, Joe, I'll be honest with you. People, you could say the most, I've done it. People in my family, friends, they just change the subject. They don't want to hear it.
Joe,
And we're not quite there yet. The pain, the fiscal pain, or the country, to be honest with you, falls apart. And I got news for you. If America falls apart geopolitically, we're going to have a lot more to worry about than Rachel Maddow.
let me tell you something.
And I got news for you, dude.
And on abortion and on these moral issues, we're atrocious. And I would still agree with you. If America falls apart, we need to turn around abortion. We need to turn around all these things. We need to do an about face and reverse these things. But having said that, even given those things that we are horrible at, particularly abortion, okay? If we fall apart, the world's done.
Oh, Joe, it will get so. Do you know how quick China will cross the border? Do you know how quick Russia will just take and take? This is like, but this is what happens. People have to get to that point. It's going, Joe. And then, to be honest with you, it will begin again.
Joe,
society will begin again.
I want to give you
we're
the
not
perfect
there
example.
yet. They won't talk about it. They want to talk about going to the bathroom in the wrong bathroom, and they want to make it an issue. And if you say otherwise, you're a hater. This is
Right.
where we're at.
Joe,
I mean, and you can't talk to these people, Joe, because they don't want to hear it.
no, I agree. I agree. Angry Catholic is in the chat room. Love you, Paul. Love you guys and what you do. Everybody, angrycatholic.com, angrycatholic.com. Paul and his wife, they're great. I just want Joe, let me tell you just to leave people a little bit of hope. Okay. The Roman Empire lasted 1,000 years. First as a republic for the first 500 years or so, and then as an empire for the second 400 to 500 years. Okay. Arguably the greatest civilization on earth. Okay. I believe that God allowed the Roman Empire to flourish because he was going to use the Roman Empire to form Europe under the Catholic Church. I believe that. Okay. But that's not why I'm bringing it up. Rome was a wreck in the middle of the 5th century. Rome was a mess. Everything that we see in our society right now, okay, from a once great power that Rome was, strong, virtuous, I would say, at some point, okay, where they devolved, okay. What happened, Joe? Sexual liberation, inflation, all right, their money was worth nothing, okay, lax, not caring about anything, departing from first principles, okay, all of it. Exactly what we're doing now. And what happened to them? They fell. They fell. And within a very short period of time, Europe was rebuilt on the ruins of the Roman Empire by the Catholic Church. That's historical fact. I don't care what the atheists say. I don't care what the Protestants say. I don't care what the Muslims say. I don't care what the Jews say. That's a historical fact. The Catholic Church rebuilt Europe on the ruins of the Roman Empire. And then you had a flourishing in Europe for 1,000 years until Martin Luther torpedoed it. Having said all that, that's the same thing that's going to happen now. I bring it up to say we can have hope. We can have hope. We've seen what adherence to the church, the sacraments, God's grace did in history with the Romans in Western Europe. And listen, God will, if he wills, God will do the same thing again. But we need to get back to that. And I have hope in that. I think that if this country changed, Joe, fell somewhat, lost its prestige somewhat, maybe got a little bit weaker, maybe reined it a little bit, but started to look inward, and we started applying Catholic principles in this country, Joe, we could have, I am not one of those people that say this is the greatest country that ever existed, but we could have the greatest country that ever existed if we did that.
Well, I would say this, our hope should not be in man, it should be in God. And that's why we should pray. Don't underestimate the power of prayer, the grace of God that could be instilled, the whisper into the ear of man from God, and the ability of man to respond to it. You see, that's why the rosary is the weapon. We should pray the rosary for America. If all Catholics prayed the rosary, America would change. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. It takes 15 minutes a day. There lies our hope. And if you ask me, hope is only found in God, not in politics, not in man. And we have to go back to that. That's why, to be honest with you, we do this show. But listen, everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's got an opinion. What I will say is this. Look at the fruit of people who live holy lives, and look at the bad fruit of those who don't.
Right.
It says it all. And follow the saints, and maybe you'll turn out to be one.
There you go. And Joe, that's a great place to end it. Want to thank you all for joining us at the front line with Joe and Joe. Jonathan, post a link in the chat room for those who want to join. Come into the private chat and have a little bit more of a conversation. Joe and I are going to make this a practice every Sunday night. We're gonna stay on for about a half hour, 20 minutes, as long as we can't stay on too long. We both got to go to work tomorrow, but we can talk a little bit more, have a little bit more of an intimate conversation. Please help us on YouTube, on the Frontline TV. Okay, that station is growing. We want it to continue to grow and help us. Mike Church, Crusade Channel, crusadechannel.com. Okay, become a premium member. We would encourage you to do so. Veritas Catholic Radio Network, okay? Serving the New York metropolitan area, 1350 on your AM dial in Connecticut, Westchester, Northern Long Island. They have an app. You could download it. You know what you can hear on the download? A whole bunch of shows, including the interview show that Joe and I have. That airs every Tuesday and Thursday at noon on the radio. Joe and I are on the radio, but you can get the download and you could binge listen to Joe and Joe. We have E. Michael Jones. We have Raymond Arroyo. We have so many people on there. Bill Donahue that we've spoken to, and we know that you'll love that. As always, we ask you, because we talk about it all the time, to keep us in your prayers. We don't need your money. We like some if you want to contribute, okay? But we don't need your money. What we need is God's grace. And I would say pray for us. We pray for you. We pray for the good of our nation. We pray for the good of our church. And we want everybody to go to heaven. That's the bottom line. So remember this until next week, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.
Peace. Thank you for listening.